All right, guys. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, this lesson is the beginning parts of the Civil War. Okay, the actual war part. Okay, uh, let's see. Come on. Oops, we went a little bit too far. All right, so we're going to analyze whether Fort Sumter was actually a legitimate battle. We're going to examine the first assassination attempt of Abraham Lincoln, and we're going to create an argument of whether this guy, John Brown, should be considered a martyr. Now, you may not know what the term martyr means, but that's okay because when we get to the end, I'm going to give you the definition and basically you're going to share your opinion. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the warm up. So here's the picture. Okay, as you can see from your worksheet, there are two questions. Okay, the first one's asking you to name three things you see in this. I see this. I see that. I see whatever that third thing may be. Okay. Now, the second question is asking you from your analysis of this picture, from looking at it from left to right, up and down, foreground, background, does this picture depict peacefulness or does it depict peaceful uh, type of image, type of picture? And why do you say that? What are some clues that show you that this is a peaceful picture or it's not a peaceful one? Okay, so think about it, pause the video, write your response, okay, because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so the guy right here you see the picture of, that is John Brown. He was an abolitionist. Now, what does that mean? At this time, what we're talking about in history, an abolitionist was somebody who believed that slavery should be gotten rid of. Now, John Brown basically looked at history and saw, talking to people who wanted slavery, trying to convince them how slavery is wrong, trying to prove to them that slavery is wrong, it doesn't work. When you try to use legal statutes, you try to use the law to prove, to show that, hey, slavery is wrong and things like that, it doesn't work. So he basically figured out, you know what? The only way we can get these guys' attention is if you kick them in the teeth and you let them know you mean business. And in this case, he's talking about a revolt, fighting back and getting rid of slavery. Okay. Now, he has a very simple but pretty simple, like if it worked, if it got going, it could be a pretty effective plan. So the plan was this: they were going to go to the National Armory, okay, get weapons, guns, and things like that. They were going to go to a plantation, free those slaves, right? Any slave that wanted to join with him to free another plantation, give him guns. And then his army is now even bigger. Then they go to another plantation, free those slaves, and anyone who wants to help free more slaves, give them guns, and then go to another plantation and another and another and another. All while he's doing this, his army is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay? That was the plan. Give the gun to the slaves, save the other people who didn't want to get involved, didn't want to fight, let them go, let them be free, you know. But hey, go to plantation and free the slaves in those homes and those plantations. But first, they need the weapons. So on October 16th, 1859, at this place called Harper's Ferry, Virginia, they are going to rob the National Armory. Now, what is an armory? It's a place where the military keeps their weapons, their guns, their ammunition, things like that. Now, he has a group of people with him. Five free black men. These are guys who were born free, okay? And 13 white men. And of those 13 white men, two of them are his sons, okay? Now, they're trying to break in, trying to get these guns, and they're spotted. The problem with this location is this: they're at a ferry. What that means is there's water right here, like a river. A ferry is where a place where the boats come to take people from one side, of land to another, crossing water. So they're basically have their backs against the wall, right next to a river. Now, Robert E. Lee, sorry about that, dinner was delivered. So, again, Robert E. Lee, the our nation's greatest soldier at this point in history, is commanding the Marines, and he's telling them, "All right, you guys take this side, you guys take that side, you guys fire at them. Then you guys, as they're drawing their fire, you get closer. And then when you guys get close enough, you guys draw fire, and then you guys come closer, and then the front's going to come up." And so he's telling them what to do strategically, again, because that's what kind of soldier he was. He was a tacticianer. He was very smart in that kind of stuff. So they start fighting the Marines and John Brown and his people. And what ends up happening is his men are dying left and right, things like that. And his own two sons die. One takes a gunshot to the head, another one in the chest, and they both die instantaneously. So once enough guys are dead, John Brown comes out. He's like, "Okay, okay, I surrender. You guys got me." You know. So they arrest him and they basically sentence him to death. So he dies for what he did. Now, Frederick Douglass, we mentioned him before in previous lessons. He's the nation's most famous runaway slave, and he beard John Brown, the man, right? This is the type of man everyone should strive to be like, because if you think about it, look at it. He's a white guy, has a good family, has money, has a job. He could have easily lived his life. He didn't have to try to free the slaves. He could have just lived his life and just done. That's it. Do his thing. But he saw there was something wrong with this country. And he decided, instead of just sitting around talking about it, he did something. And it ended up costing his life, which he gave up gladly to try to right a wrong in our country. So the northern people loved John Brown, calling him a hero and things like that. In the South, 180, they were, he wanted us dead. He was trying to give our slaves guns. He's all about violence, and you're trying to say he's a hero? No, horrible, boo. So they were taking it as, hey, he's a terrorist. How can you make a hero out of a terrorist? And of course, because he was trying to free the slaves, and Republicans feel that slavery is wrong, they try to say, oh, the Republican people, they're part of this group too. They were probably in on it too. They weren't. Okay. All right. So the last lesson, I've had some students in class ask me, why did Lincoln have a beard? We're talking about his early life. And that's what I was going to teach you today. So what happened? Lincoln got a letter from this 11-year-old girl named Grace Bedell. And she basically wrote in the letter saying how amazing he was and he speaks so well and her whole family loves him. But she goes, "But you look sick. You look too thin. You should like grow out a beard so that your face doesn't look so, sunken in." And Lincoln, instead of being like, "Oh man, this little kid, how dare she say this stuff?" He basically like looks at himself and is like, maybe I am kind of thin. And he asks his family and friends, "Hey, do I look too thin? Do I look sick?" And everyone, all his friends were like, "Dude, we've been wanting to tell you this for the longest time. Yeah, you do look sick. You look too thin, you know." And Lincoln's like, "Well, maybe I should grow out my beard." So that's when he starts growing it out. And it's all because of an 11-year-old girl. And like I said in class, and I'll say it again, if you want a brutally honest answer about something, ask a 6-year-old kid. They'll tell you straight up. I, If you tell, oh, how do I look in this outfit? They'll tell you straight up, I don't look good. You look nasty. You know, like, oh, how you like these shoes? Yeah, they look stupid. You know, they'll tell you straight up. They have no filter. So again, you want brutal, honest answers? Ask the 6-year-old. So Lincoln is elected president. He's not president yet. About a month after he's elected, the southern states have a convention. They start talking about whether they're going to separate from the United States or not. And 3 days later, South Carolina becomes the first state to secede from the United States. The term secede means to separate. Now, I've had some students ask me in class, is that possible for a state to separate from the United States? Absolutely. There's nothing in the law that says that all the states have to be together. No. If California wants to be its own country, we can separate from the United States. Now, does that mean that we could still use their money and stuff like that and still get resources? No, we're on our own. We're basically cutting ourselves off from them. So that's what's happening. That's the thing that a lot of these countries like, oh, we're going to separate if Obama's president, if Trump's president, so and so is president. We're going to separate. It's like, well, good luck because you're not going to do well by yourself. That means they have to create their own army, own money, own economy, everything. And it's not something that's very simple to do. Okay. But South Carolina does this. The next month, 6 more states join them. Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas. All these states join them and they form another country, which they call the Confederacy. Okay, so in all these states are now one country. And this is again where our nation is literally divided into two. Now, again, before Lincoln's even president, there's already a plot to assassinate him. Lincoln said, you know what, I'm going to take a train. I'm going to stop off in like Chicago, Toledo, New York, Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, stuff like that. Go to Boston, go to Baltimore. I want to meet the people. Well, here's the thing. In Baltimore, there were people who didn't like him, didn't like that he won the election. So they had a plan. When the train came in, they were going to be in the crowd, basically surrounding the train. And they were going to get close and close and close to where he was shaking people's hands. And once they get close enough, they were going to shoot at him. Okay? The closer they could get, the better, That was the plan. Lincoln was just like, okay, sure, whatever. You kind of shrugged it off. His advisors were like, you should really take this seriously. He's like, you know. Now, there was a special group called the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. These guys were like, if you wanted to be protected, these guys were the guys. These were ex-military sharpshooters. These guys were the best of the best. And they told Lincoln, you should really take this seriously, sir. What our intelligence is getting, this is a legit threat. They are really wanting to kill you in Baltimore. Lincoln goes, no, 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 no. Listen, guys, I said I was going to be in Baltimore. I'm going to be in Baltimore. So the train makes its way. Finally, February 23rd, 1861, around 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, the train comes in and everyone's all, yay, Lincoln, yay, Lincoln. And everyone's waiting for him to come out and he doesn't. One of his aides comes out and says, oh, yeah, Lincoln's not here. And everyone's like, well, where is he? See, Lincoln didn't sweat it because he already had a plan. He said he was going to stop off in Baltimore, and that's exactly what he did. Except he stopped off in Baltimore on an earlier train at around 2 in the morning. So the train came into Baltimore, stopped. He comes out. Hello, Baltimore. Wow, no one's here. Oh, well. Well, I came to Baltimore to see the people, and no one's here. So he did keep his word. He showed up in Baltimore to meet the people. It's just no one showed up at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that's what I mean. He does earn that title, Honest Abe. He kept his word. It's just he didn't show up when they expected him. And so on March 4th, 1861, Lincoln is sworn in and he's inaugurated as our 16th president of the United States. So, this picture you see right here, that is Fort Sumter. It's an island in the Charleston Harbor in South Carolina. Okay. Now, the Confederates, remember I told you, they basically, the ones in South Carolina, Florida, Texas, Louisiana, all those places, they basically told the Union, the United States, they told them, look at all this land in our state, that's ours. So these forts, these armories, all the stuff that's in them, that's our property now. That's not yours. And the Union was like, no, that fort, that's American soil. That's Union soil. So no, that's not your guys's. That's ours. Now, Lincoln didn't want to start a fight. Okay, he really didn't. He didn't want to go down as the president who started the war, started the fight between the North and the South. But he also knew he couldn't surrender that land. So Lincoln does what he does best. He delays. He says, you know what, how can we find out what's going on down there without like starting a war? And someone in his administration says, we could send supplies. They're running short on food. They need their mail, things like that. He's like, perfect, perfect. Get a boat, get some food, get the mail for those soldiers and things like that. So the ship is making its way towards this island, and also when it gets near, cannonballs start near the ship, and the ship does a total U-turn, goes back and basically tells Lincoln, "Oh no, those Confederate guys, they're ready. They're ready for some type of war." Okay, so the resupply mission fails. Now, the Confederates have a guy in charge named Pierre Beauregard. Okay, the Union, people on the island, their guy in charge is Major Robert Anderson. And these guys decide to meet up and discuss, is there any type of negotiations that can be met? Beauregard basically says, that land is ours. We're going to take it. Anderson goes, well, that we're not going to surrender it. You know that, right? Beauregard's like, yeah. It's like, so you want it, but we're not going to surrender it to you. So what do we do? Do we fight? I mean, what do we do? Beauregard's like, well, we'll see what happens. So each men go back to their respected positions. And on April 12th, 1861, the Confederates start launching cannons all over, start hitting the fort. If you look at the picture where the flags are, there used to be a building there. There used to be a building there, and it got demolished because of the cannonball fire. Okay, now here's the thing, the Confederates, the South, they're shooting the cannonballs. The North, the people inside this fort on this island, they don't shoot one gun. They don't shoot one cannon. They're not firing back at all. Okay, so one side is launching cannonballs, shooting their guns, things like that at this place. The other side's not shooting back. Here's the other interesting part about this battle, no one on either side dies. With all this cannonballs demolishing a building and stuff like going onto this island, No one is killed. The most that happened, someone got their ankle hurt because they dropped a cannonball on their foot and it hurt their ankle. That's it. The cannonball slipped from their hands, fell on their ankle, and they got hurt. That's the only casualty, if you want to use that word, for this battle. So the next morning, actually, sorry, next day, around 2:30 p.m., Anderson comes out and says, "Okay, we're going to surrender this island, but we need at least a day to get these men out of here." So Beauregard's like, "Okay, fine, we'll give you a day. Get your men out of there." All right. So they have an agreement. Okay. The Confederacy is going to take that island, but the Union has a day to get all the men and everything out of there. All right. So here is your question. Do you believe John Brown should be considered a martyr? Why or why not? So here's the definition of a martyr: it's a person who is killed because of their religious beliefs or any other type of beliefs. So they, like John Brown, believes slavery should be done with and things like that. And he had a plan, and he died to get rid of slavery. Okay, so by definition, he's a martyr. But here's the kicker: we use the term martyr as a kind of sacred term. You know, like people like Jesus, Gandhi, Martin Luther King. These guys all preached non-violence. They were not violent people. So we like to give them the title martyr because again, we try to keep it like sacred. But by definition, John Brown is. So do you think he is? Does he belong in that same group as Jesus, Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, even though he was preaching about violence and these guys weren't? Should they be put in the same group as a martyr? What do you think? Okay. So the writing prompts on the bottom, if you don't know how to write the sentence, okay, I believe that John Brown should or shouldn't be considered a martyr because, and explain. Okay. Once you finish this question, you're done with this lesson. All right. So, guys, hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. All right. I'll see you guys later. You guys, you take care. You be safe. All right.